All right, I'm back. I'm back. Um, yeah. Like I said, that was going to be really short. I just wanted to use the bathroom and also having the intermission screen up for even a second gives me a really good idea of where I need to split the VOD. So that's why. Um, been bouncing around today? Ah, good. Glad to hear you're doing good, David. Bouncing around online, I should say. Glad to hear you're doing good. All right, let's jump back into it, I guess. The Old Bailey. Hey, Sholmes. Ah, the knight errant himself. Oh, have you been watching from the gallery, Mr. Sholmes? I've been on the edge of my seat the entire time. Courtroom trials are fascinating affairs, as a spectator at least. I'm glad you've been enjoying yourself. I have to ask, what on earth is going on? It makes no sense. What is this professor business all about? He doesn't look like any professor I've ever met before. Who even is he? Of course, you were in Germany already 10 years ago. Yes, the professor. When I discovered he was the one who had been abducted, a sense of foreboding stirred within me. But who knew the monster would come knocking at your door? My heartfelt sympathies. As it turns out, Lord Van Zieks is even more intimately tied to this case than any of us realized, isn't he? Yes, how true. His great friend from university in the dark, and now a waxwork of the killer who took his esteemed brother's life makes an appearance too. I imagine even the shrewd Mr. Reaper failed to see that kick in the teeth. An extraordinary move on your part, my dear fellow, to throw that in front of the man. You make it sound deliberate. I can't help feeling that this professor case is really very puzzling. Why do I have the dread feeling that, like, Masked Man is going to take over prosecution for the second half of this? Oh yes, in what particular manner? Well, there's Mr. Jabber, Dr. Scythe, and Lord Van Zieks. It seems that everybody in the trial has a link to the case somehow. Yes, in fact, I alone am not a member of the set. Though that leaves me as an empty set, all alone with no intersection to any other. Excuse me. Is that gonna be... Oh. Dr. Scythe! Ah, Dr. Courtney Scythe, née Stevens. Good day to you. Hello, Sholmes. That was very shrewd of you. What in particular, pray? You requested that 10-year-old autopsy report from Gregson, didn't you? Why would you assume such a thing? Because Gregson told me. To think it's been 10 years. She's so hot. 10 years in the laboratory, wielding my scalpel. I smell of nothing but corpses and disinfectant. A policeman on the jury had a lot to say about you, as it happens, Miss Dr. Scythe, and I've accused you of being complicit in what happened. I'm hoping that you'll take the stand and tell the truth about what really happened. That certainly won't be possible. Lord Van Zieks won't be summoning me as a witness. Lord Strongheart has forbidden it. Lord Strongheart? The Pandora's box you were warned about is the Professor case. Please don't make the mistake of thinking you'll get any information about it out of me. But attempting to hide from the truth, that's cowardice. I've always fought crime in the way I see fit. I have no regrets, none at all. And that's all I came here to say. So, good day to you. Oh, she's showing up in case 5. She mentioned it too, this Pandora's box. Is case 5 going to be the actual professor case? Whatever does it all mean? There's really no cause for concern. I assure you, when the trial resumes, the meaning will become all too apparent whether you'd like it to or not. Now then, I believe it's almost time. I must make my way back to the public gallery. The edge of my seat awaits! You're right, Paper Star, but I think it's fine. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. She's devoted to her craft. Ah yes, one word of warning before I go. If, in the course of the trial this afternoon, you perceive even a shadow of doubt about the truth, don't let it out of your sight. Pursue it like a dog with a bone. To this bitter end, you understand. Do not falter, whatever may come to pass. Alright, I understand. Thank you. Good. I shall make myself scarce then. I purchased a bar of caramel earlier, so I shall be gnawing on that as you gnaw away at the truth. Did that say Sholmes caramel? You didn't buy that. What did that warning from Mr. Sholmes really mean, I wonder? Especially the bit about whatever may come to pass. Uh-oh. Time for the final chapter then. I'm determined to find the truth, no matter what. Sholmes with that weeb drip. Yeah, no, that's the alternate costume. He looking good with a little boob window. Not really a boob window, just like a low neck. Yeah. Yeah, so the alternate costumes are for Ryu, Ryunosuke, Susato, and Sholmes. And so, like, Ryu and Susato both have, like, steampunk British outfits, and Sholmes gets traditional Japanese. In the name of Her Majesty the Queen, I hereby reconvene the proceedings of the court. Counsel for the defense and prosecution, are you ready and able to continue? The prosecution is ready, my lord. Yes, my lord. The defense is also ready. As the court is aware, the case is under our scrutiny began with a damaging incident at the Great Exhibition. Yet we now find ourselves embroiled in the details of a convicted felon who was sent to the gallows a decade ago. Its trial has certainly defiled all expectation. As seems to be the fate of all trials in which this Nipponese is involved, my lord. So then, let us begin our exploration of the defense's assertion that the waxwork was cardinally involved in this matter. Lord Van Zeeks. My lord? Are you still awaiting the arrival of Miss Madame Two Spells? Not at all. She is in the antechamber as we speak and ready to be summoned. Very well. Bring in the witness. At once, my lord. I can't wait to see my witch wife again. Bailiff, show Madame Two Spells to the stand. Things are about to become a lot more intense. If Drebber is responsible, as I'm sure he is, it means he must have had an accomplice in Dr. Scythe. And what connects the pair of them is the waxwork. Yes, the model of the professor. That's the key to the link between these otherwise unrelated individuals. It's a tenuous link, admittedly, but at present, it's all we have to go on. Hey, look, it's Sholmes. State your name and occupation for the court, please. My name is Madame Esmeralda Two Spells. I am a waxwork artisan, and the proprietress of the Madame Two Spells Artwork Museum of Waxwork. You will have to pardon me for working as I testify. My new exhibit must open very soon. Oh, so he finally gets a statue, does he? Now there are two of them in the world. Oh my, what expression is she carving into that face? A number of days ago, a particular waxwork model was stolen from your museum. Can you confirm this? Oui, that is true. At first, we believed it had been kidnapped. A waxwork model kidnapped? Yes, my lord. There was a demand for ransom money left behind by the culprit. Good night, Blue Coin. Take care, my friend. However, according to what I have just been told outside the courtroom, that was not the true reason. I understand it was utilized as a substitute for the body of a murder victim. At present, that is no more the conjecture proposed by the defense. This is the victim of the case in question, Mr. O.D. Asman. But of course, I know him well. He's a part of my odious person just exists. Ah, there's the pun right there, odious. I detest to say what is evident, but Mr. Asman does not resemble the professor at all. Yes, but perhaps their faces are very similar? Are you suggesting that we should now see the demasked visage of the professor? I have here the key, but it's strictly forbidden to open the lock. This is absurd. Pardon? Alton? I don't know what face you've carved onto your fancy figure beneath that mask. Clearly, it won't be that of the actual killer. Indeed, the man's identity was never made public after all. The trial took place in the closed court. The proceedings were strictly confidential. This condemned man was summarily executed. His identity remains a closely guarded national secret. There is no possible way that a repository of tawdry exhibits could get its hands on that information. Quel dommage. Quel dommage. Quel dommage. It would seem you're unaware of Two Spells' principles. What principles? The family Two Spells has always prided itself on sculpting its models à la perfection. Every detail, including the visage, is fashioned with complete fidelity. Et voilà, our principles. There's a well-known legend about the Two Spells waxworks from the time of the French Revolution. A member of the Dispel's family is said to have made a waxwork of the queen who was executed. Oui, that is true. It was a century ago now. I believe the queen's face was carved in the minutes following her death, actually at the guillotine's side. You are correct. The model is on display. Is on display still today in the House of Elves. We two spells will stop at nothing to obtain a faithful replica of our subjects. Dear me, a somewhat disturbing tenacity of purpose. It is the only way to obtain a truly lifelike representation of the subject. And it has been my family's secret for generations. That's what I'm saying, David. She's gorgeous. Do you mean to say that beneath that mask? Oui, the true visage of the killer is there. This is ludicrous. It's out of the question. The professor spread terror throughout Great Britain. As a result, the Madame Tussauds special exhibit remains extremely popular even today. The killer emerging from his own grave. It is a sight to behold. You should come. I think, Madame, it would be beneficial to hear your formal testimony on the matter. You will explain every detail of this macabre model and your personal involvement in its creation. With pleasure. The special exhibit in the House of Elves is based on a rumor that shocked society in London. An impression of the visage was taken directly from the corpse, in accordance with Dispel's family principles. I enlisted the aid of the gravedigger and created a mold for the head in the cemetery just before the interment. I hid myself until he gave me a signal. I was there for a very long time that night. As dawn approached, I was very worried that I could be discovered. She did what? The gravedigger, the man sanctioned this? Oui, I will do all that is necessary to achieve the true resemblance my family celebrated for. Nobody else knew, only the gravedigger. What harm did it do? So you truly saw it? The face of that monster? Naturellement. I was aware at the time that his identity was a secret, but the two spells would not be two spells if we did not insist on absolute fidelity to our sculpture. I don't believe this. I myself have seen the special exhibit at your museum, madam. A truly blood-curdling scene in which the murderer is emerging from his own grave. Being at the Peaks was the subject of many rumors in London 10 years ago. I have here a newspaper from the time. The special exhibit was based on the picture in this article. It was the most detailed account of what happened, as reported by the eyewitness who saw it. Man rises from the grave. It's too absurd for words. The public enjoy absurdity, monsieur. That's why I've reproduced the scene as carefully as possible in my museum. And it's a waxwork from that exhibit that was stolen some days before the incident of the Great Exhibition, wasn't it? That is correct. The professor you see before you here. Most puzzling. Counsel for the defense, proceed with the cross-examination. This waxwork links Drebber to Dr. Scythe. And there has to be some reason for that, which hasn't yet come to light. But I'll find it. I'll get to the bottom of what really happened. I'll prove that Dr. Scythe and Drebber were in on this crime together. Hold it! That rumor would be a 10-year-old tale now, but ones that no Londoner would ever forget. Alright, I know just what you're talking about, I think. Of course, it couldn't be anything else. Yes, that story will never disappear. The tale of the condemned killer rising from the dead. That is the central attraction of my House of Horrors. The rumor was whispered all over the city, and it was like this. It was in Lowgate Cemetery behind the prison. In the dead of night after the execution of the killer, the intel professor leaned back the stone slab covering his tomb and emerged from his grave. A young man who witnessed this felt a scream welling up inside him, but an instant later, he heard an ear-splitting gunshot from over his shoulder. The bullet struck the emerging corpse, and he fell motionless once more. The scream finally found its way from the mouth of the young witness, who turned and ran for his life. So the corpse climbed out of his own grave. And then somebody shot him? Who was it? Nobody knows, even today. But remember, it was just a rumor. Perhaps nothing more than a ghost story. The good people of London, they love stories like this. That is why it was in every newspaper across the capital. But it was just a story? I mean, this is exactly the scene that can be seen today in your museum, isn't it? Oui. Special exhibit was modeled on that very illustration. For a while afterwards, the contents of that article were reproduced in every newspaper imaginable. Madame, may I say something? Yes, go ahead, mademoiselle. When something is described as a rumor, it doesn't mean that it's entirely made up. Necessarily means it's entirely made up. I believe that often, rumors contain elements of the truth. Ah, I see that people from the East can be just as astute as the people of Europe. Can we be sure, for instance, that the professor's execution was successful? It is not possible for the dead to come back to life. Sorry. 10 years ago, I was there in Logis Cemetery. After the criminal, known as the professor, was killed by hanging. I took a wax impression of his visage from the corpse just before it was interred. I can assure you, the man was dead. I see. It was certainly appear the condemned man suffered the intended fate. Benzix is not okay. Is that true of every waxwork in your museum then? It is, assuming the subject is dead, of course. Live subjects have to cooperate in a similar way. I have letters from imprisoned criminals all the time, you know. What sort of letters? When my time comes, please make a waxwork of me. Kapsa. No. My museum is famous, monsieur. To be made into a waxwork is an honor, and for some criminals, a symbol of status even. Because nothing says hardened criminal better than wax. And it's thanks to one killer in particular that my museum has gained such popularity in London. I refer to the star of the special exhibit, of course, the professor, whose form you have claimed to have captured by taking an impression from the actual corpse. There are no exceptions to the principles of two spells. Surely that's illegal, isn't it? It would seem the proprietress of this repository of novelties was blinded by monetary greed. It had nothing to do with money. The man is part of London's criminal history. That is why I had to sculpt him, to record this story. It is the raison d'etre of the Two-Spells Museum. But if the man was convicted in a closed court and sent for immediate execution, then surely nobody but the members of the judiciary present know the killer's true identity. I assure you, behind that mask is hidden the true face of the professor. Do you realize what you're saying? The professor's identity is a national secret. I understand. And now the truth about that special exhibit has been revealed. It must perhaps close. Of course it will, as will your entire museum if you don't tread very carefully, madam. That could be another interesting chapter in the history of my family, don't you think? So 10 years ago on the night of the professor's execution, you took a wax impression of his face from the corpse. Oui, exactement. Hold it! You were there longer than you expected to be? I had some difficulties in capturing the subject's form correctly. As I removed the mask, the mouth of the cadaver fell open, and I had some problems with his chin. Dare I ask? The man had been dead for a short while already, you see. His muscles were relaxing, and consequently his chin would not align itself correctly. Oh dear, what a horrible thought. Under normal circumstances, I would have an assistant with me. However, else that night I was alone, and as a consequence, I missed my preferred window of time. What do you mean? When I take the impression of the visage of a cadaver, I order it until 3 hours after death. Why 3 hours? is the amount of times they get rigor mortis. It is because of rigor mortis. Wriggly mortis. It's the name given to a phenomenon that occurs in recently deceased bodies. Yep, absolutely, you have to sew the jaw closed. As a rule, 3 hours post-death, the muscles in the body begin to stiffen. By approximately 10 hours post-death, the entire body is completely rigid and inflexible. And then from that point on, the muscles slowly start to revert to their relaxed state. The effect is often used to estimate the time of death when a body is discovered. Well, that was an education, if a slightly scary one. As the Mademoiselle says, rigor mortis commences 3 hours after death, and it starts in the jaw. I see, so that's why you wait. Before that time, the mouth falls open, and it is very difficult to do my work. Ugh, it's getting really hard for me to do my work with all this talk of corpses. I wonder about... It's significant. The information about rigor mortis that you just shared with us. Would you mind including it in your formal testimony? I believe it could be significant, you see. Of course, I do not mind at all. I can't help the feeling after this latest topic, the atmosphere in this courtroom has become extremely grave. This is no time for jokes, Miss Suzato. I thought it was pretty funny. Madame, please kindly amend your testimony as discussed. Yes, sir. Rigor mortis being the phenomenon. Yes. I think he said it starts with the jaw about 3 hours post-death, is that right? Oui, c'est ça. Of course. The exact duration depends a little on the season. I didn't realize a waxwork artisan would be so well versed in the subject. No. That is only elementary knowledge in the field of legal medicine. I had no idea about it, but maybe I won't admit to it my ignorance about forensic science. I could ask my father to give you a very simple primer if you like. I think corpses should be your domain. I'm not good with them. Oh dear, I'll do my very best. What do you mean as dawn approached? Wait a minute. The death was confirmed at midnight. They buried him immediately. You mean to tell me that within, before 3 hours, from midnight, it was close to dawn? I disagree.
Objection!
What? No, that's right.
Hold it!
You said the dawn was approaching? What was time of day then, approximately? Well, I could not say. But when I left the cemetery with my utensils and wax, the morning light was becoming visible. The execution took place on 17th June, which had the earliest sunrise for that year. Indeed it did. First light would have... What? That really is early. The fact is, I had very little time, so I finished my work in a half hour. It was necessary to complete the impression and bury the body before daybreak, of course. If somebody had discovered me there, it would have been a catastrophe, so I had to hurry. Is it me, or does Mr. Solm seem to be taking shape much more quickly now, too? You certainly appear to get extraordinary lengths for your work, madame. It's significant. Of course, if you would like me to. A sunrise at 4 in the morning would be absolutely unimaginable at home with me. It's not quite what I meant by significant. 4 AM sunrise would be really interesting. I didn't know that could happen in London.
Hold it!
Did you have reason to believe you might be discovered once the sun came up or something? I paid the gravedigger money to keep my little secret, of course. But with the morning light, I knew that the warden from the prison would commence his patrol of the area. Didn't you have just paid off the warden too, then? I had already paid the gravedigger, as I said. You cannot buy the silence of everyone, or the secret is no longer a secret, huh? The sunrise was at 4:40 a.m. that day, which means that it would have been around 4 when you began sculpting your work. Oui, that must be correct. That would be when the gravedigger gave me the single command of writing. Something is wrong here. Rigor mortis should have already set in. Now, I'm not sure where I'm supposed to present this, but I know I'm not crazy.
Objection!
Thank you. Madame Tuspels. I have here an autopsy report that was filed 10 years ago now. It confirms the death of the professor following his execution at the gallows. And that is a problem? I believe it is, because your testimony and a particular detail in the report completely contradict one another. What? Are you going to explain yourself, my Nipponese friend? According to her testimony, Madame Tuspel was creating her wax impression just before dawn, and at that time rigor mortis had not yet set in. Am I correct so far, madam? Madame, you are, yes. As I said, the stiffening of the jaw is the first sign of rigor mortis, 2 to 3 hours after death. But the man's chin was limp, so he cannot have been dead for a long time. But on the other hand, if you look at Dr. Scythe's report, it quite clearly states the following. Death by hanging confirmed at midnight, 17th June. Oh. If the professor indeed died at midnight that day, then by the time he was sculpting his face, rigor mortis would have already set in. Oui, yes, you're right. The chin, it would have been completely stiff. In other words, this report is wrong.
Objection!
No coroner makes mistakes when recording the time of death. The very idea is absurd. In that case, there's only one possible conclusion. The execution didn't actually take place at the stated time. Impossible. Order, Counsel, this is beyond folly. Not only do you indict the author of the report, Dr. Scythe, but you also implicate members of staff at Barclay prison where the execution took place. Why heck, extraordinary. Not that I do. My learned friend appears to have overlooked one very crucial fact. What fact? The professor died that night, without question. He did, of course he did. I moved the man's limp jaw with my own hand. There was no... Yes, the professor died that night. What if he didn't die at the gallows? Didn't die at... Are you insane? What exactly are you suggesting did happen in that case? Almost impossible to believe, but it would explain the link between Dr. Scythe, the professor, and that one other person of interest. I have evidence that will explain exactly what I'm suggesting happened that night. Is it the camera?
Take that! Objection!
No, it's not the camera. Oh my god, it's... I'm stupid.
Take that!
What happened this? What happened that night is written very plainly in this newspaper article. Executed criminal returns in the dead of night at a local cemetery. You're suggesting it was a corpse coming back from the dead now. Well, if this article is to be believed, yes. The professor, assumed dead following his execution, emerged from his grave and was killed again.
Objection!
Don't be a fool. That's simply a rumor published by the gutter press. Can you be certain of that? Are you serious? The point is, as the article says, there was a witness to what happened. My word, yes indeed. No, the young man who stole into the cemetery by chance that night.
Objection!
Of course there was a witness. The story didn't write itself, but obviously the man made it all up. In any case, this was 10 years ago now. There would surely be no hope of finding him. On the contrary, my lord, we know this witness well. Are you suggesting, Counsel, that you've identified the person in question? Do you know who claims to have seen these utterly incredible events take place? Yes, my lord. In fact, you can say these right there before my eyes. You will substantiate your latest claim now. Enoch Threber.
Take that!
The man in question is Mr. Enoch Threber.
The previous witness.
The special exhibit in the House of Horrors at Madame Tuspel's Museum of Waxwork recreates that decade-old scene in great detail. The condemned criminal emerging from the grave, and beside the tomb, a young man with a lantern stumbling upon the terrifying sight. And that young man is a 10-year younger Mr. Enoch Drebber. She's so gorgeous.
Order, order, order. Surely not council.
Drebber was there, in Lowgate Cemetery. At least all this talk about Miss Deltado. Is the name significant? Of course, Madame Dispels doesn't know, does she? Yes, it's extremely significant, Madame. To your situation as well, in fact. Situation. This is the theft of the Professor waxwork from your museum some 3 days ago. Well, some days ago was perpetrated by the very same man. Oh. What does that would mean? Madame Dispels. It would appear you know the name Enoch Drebber. Yes, I know it. But from long ago in the past. What? Oh my.
Good gracious.
Explain yourself. Tell us everything you know. Yes, of course. Testimony. Oh god. No, right now? Oh, okay, no. The story of the young man and the terrible sight he witnessed in the cemetery 10 years ago was published in every single newspaper in London and throughout Angleterre. However, in all of the articles, the witness was simply described as a certain young man. No details were published about his identity. His name was never revealed. That is, apart from in one newspaper. The Daily Circus. It is the paper from which comes the article I've already shown ago. You're saying that his full name was only publicized in that article?
It's me. Yes, here it is. The university student who experienced this shocking event is Mr. Enoch Drebber, a disciple of science at the University of London and a resident of its student dorms.
Unbelievable. This is a great song. When I read the article, I went to meet with the man. His discovery of the condemned criminal coming back to life in the cemetery in the dead of night would make a perfect exhibit for my House of Horrors, whether it was the truth or not.
I see. So you went to Mr. Drebber in order to sculpt the waxwork of the man, did you?
Exactement. He was studying science at the University of London in those days. He was just a poor student. I paid him £5 to model for the waxwork, and since that time, it has been in my museum to recreate the scene of terror from the cemetery. That's so funny to me. It's comical, but like, oh. Yeah, I can't imagine it either. I can't imagine being that frightened. I guess maybe if you really feared for your life, but I don't think I've ever feared for my life before. So 10 years ago, a young man appealed to the public about an extraordinary event he witnessed. A criminal who had been put to death, re-emerging from his grave in the middle of the night. In the middle of the night, but the public treated his claim as nothing more than I hit bad note and now I can't carry it. 10 years later, the same man steals a waxwork model of the executed criminal, ostensibly to use as a body double for the victim in the case we're discussing here today, even though the waxwork's build is a poor match for the victim, and its face is obscured by a mask. So the question is, why would the man do such a thing? Which brings us to 3 days ago when the birdcage crashed into the Crystal Tower. If the birdcage has in fact contained the body of Mr. Asmund, but that same, not the body of Mr. Asmund, but that same waxwork, the coroner from Scotland Yard who investigated, Dr. Scythe, would have noticed immediately. And yet, she submitted this autopsy report for the victim, which the court has seen earlier. Why? Because the waxwork was that of the professor. Is that what you're saying? Dr. Scythe put her name to a document confirming the death of a condemned criminal who is still alive, a criminal whose apparent resurrection was witnessed by Mr. Drebber. That misconduct was a deadly secret the coroner would do anything to protect, which is precisely why Mr. Drebber used that particular waxwork as the body double. Oh! My lord, this court must summon Dr. Scythe to the stand. The defense is determined. Find out exactly how the coroner and Mr. Drebber are connected.
But according to the missive I received this morning through the prosecutor's office, Dr. Scythe is unable to participate in these proceedings. Is this not the case?
She told us so herself, didn't she? Lord Van Zeeks won't be summoning me as a witness. Lord Strongheart has forbidden it.
Lord Strongheart?
The Pandora's box you were warned about is the Professor case. But please don't make the mistake of thinking you'll get any more information about it out of me. Something happened on the night of that execution 10 years ago. And surely nobody wanted to get to the bottom of that more than Lord Van Zeeks. The prosecution calls for the instructions in that missive to be scrapped. But Lord Van Zeeks, this missive was issued from the Lord Chief Justice's office. The assigned prosecutor has the final say on policy in any particular trial. In other words, me. Yes? Let Enoch Drebber and Dr. Scythe both take the stand together. Yes, Van Zeeks, every time he comes in clutch for me, it is because he has a crush on me.
Order, order, order. Very well, I will upload your request. Bailiff, send a subpoena with immediate effect addressed to Dr. Scythe of the Forensic Investigation Team. The woman's compelled to attend on Her Majesty's orders.
I love him. In fairness, he is racist towards the Japanese. And there's an explanation for that has yet to be determined. But, other than that, I love him. He's gorgeous. He doesn't give a shit about anything except he wants to win, obviously. And like, he's pretty cutthroat. But like, when it comes down to something getting in the way of his truth, he does not give a shit. Like, he literally told Gregson to his face, like, fuck Scotland Yard, I'm in charge here. And that was a moment for me. He does come. And so do I. Alright, then Enoch Drebber and Dr. Scythe, if they weren't colluding with one another, this crime could never have been committed. I'm just a stone's throw away. I can feel it. The truth behind all of this is about to come out. Okay, please don't cut. Okay. Oh, you're still here?
Thank you for your attendance at such short notice, Dr. Scythe.
I'm disappointed in you, Lord Van Zeeks. You've completely betrayed the agreed policy of Scotland Yard and the prosecutor's office.
Betrayal is not in my nature, as long as the truth isn't compromised. If it is, if there's even a hint of wrongdoing, then no matter whom it concerns or disgruntles, I will pursue the matter to the bitter end, as would any prosecutor worth his salt.
Mr. Drebber. Yeah, no, the reason a lot of the characters in this game are very much racist towards the Japanese because it is a period piece. So like, it's not just Van Zeeks. Van Zeeks is probably the #1 perpetrator because you see him so much. Mr. Drebber, you took the victim's life by means of a machine that you constructed in your workshop. And Mr. Dr. Scythe, as the investigating coroner, you were the first on the scene to examine the victim's body. It is the belief of the defense that you collaborated with each other and were both complicit in this crime. And where's your evidence? At present, we have no definitive evidence, but we do have a very significant clue. What are you talking about? God, there's two hotties on the stand, and then Mr. Drebber is just there like, I'm ugly as shit, and I'm here to ruin the party. I'm talking, of course, about the waxwork. This model of the killer known as the Professor, who was sentenced to death 10 years ago. You don't need to tell me. I witnessed the man's execution with my own eyes, and officially pronounced him dead. That remains to be seen. Is that so? According to the newspaper reports of the time, on the night following his execution. Oh, move, Trevor, I can't see the cuties. The killer came back to life. Don't waste my time. And the sole witness to that mysterious event was you, Mr. Drebber, wasn't it? If what you saw in the graveyard that night 10 years ago wasn't some chilling fiction but reality, it would make you privy to a very great secret of Dr. Scythe's, a secret so profound it could compel the foreigner to agree to collaborate in their evil scheme, in fact. Mr. Drebber, tell the court. Tell everyone the truth of what you saw that night in Lowgate Cemetery. So he was the student who saw it. You can see the resemblance actually, can't you, with the man in Madame Tussauds, I mean. Surely he's not going to claim that's really what he saw, especially not after all these years. He was a research student at the University of London, wasn't he? And a bit too clever for his own good, if you ask me. What an interesting twist. When at the time not one person would take me seriously. Yet now here we are, 10 years later, and suddenly my story matters. And in a court of law, too. Very well then, if everyone so wishes, let's be frank, I'll tell you the truth of what happened that night, for what it's worth.
So, Mr. Drebber, your testimony, please.
Although, I have to admit, even though Drebber's ugly as shit, the mocap on him is fantastic.
You will tell the court exactly what you stumbled across in Lowgate Cemetery.
Yes, of course. As you wish. Like, whoever did the motion capture for this guy did an exceptional job of moving like a robot. The reason I was in Lowgate Cemetery at all 10 years ago was for a spot of moonlighting, shall we say? Yes, the illustration in that newspaper article was based on what I witnessed that night. But thinking back now, I realized that I never actually saw the professor. Soon afterwards, I was visited by a young woman who sculpted a model of me from wax. Then I gave up on my dream of becoming a scientist, and it was all because of that newspaper article. Wait a minute, you're claiming you didn't actually see the professor now? Of course, you'd have to have a screw loose if you believed the corpse could come back from the dead. But, so, you're saying this article is not worth the paper it's printed on? I think that would describe it perfectly, yes. If the details in that article aren't true, it nullifies your argument for why Mr. Drebber and Dr. Seitz would have been working together. So he's discrediting himself to cripple my argument?
A witness, you claim to have been in the cemetery on some auxiliary business. Can you elaborate?
That's right. Grave robbing, to be precise. As you know, Lowgate Cemetery is at the rear of Barclay Prison, but among the students at the university, it had a reputation for being haunted by the ghosts of condemned convicts.
Grave robbing, you say?
Yes, exhuming fresh corpses to sell is reasonably lucrative. Of course, I never laid a finger on any valuables buried with the dead. So you were one of the so-called resurrectionists, a particularly unpleasant scourge on society. Actually, my fellows and I went by another name, the Repurposers.
That is quite beyond the pale. You would invite divine retribution, sir.
Yes, well, I think I suffered retribution enough. The Daily Circus eventually unearthed my name and put it in print. It caused me a great many headaches. In the end, I had to leave the university. Huh? Florida, this was real? Okay, well we'll talk about that later. I see. Out of interest, who drew the illustration for this article? Oh, the whole exhuming corpse, okay. Ah, yes, that was the reporter who exposed me. He sketched that right in front of me as I described the scene. Obviously, as time ticked on, I bitterly regretted what I'd done, claiming I had to have seen something I never truly saw. Foolish, very foolish.
Well, counsel for the defense, you may proceed your cross-examination now.
At once, my lord.
Hold it!
By moonlighting, you mean grave robbing, do you? Surely you need only look at the grave. You only need to look at the graveyard scene and my appearance to gauge the answer to that. Honestly, I thought the same thing when I saw it. The lantern and spade. But who on earth would want to buy a dead body? Any major hospital. Not you. But I will look at you more. A hospital? In order to better understand the human body, the study of anatomy is critical to medical science. But there isn't a hospital in the world that has enough specimens to work with. But obviously, they can't openly express an interest in obtaining more by dubious means. As aspiring scientists, we young research students had no money to work with, as I'm sure you could imagine. So we made surreptitious agreements with the hospital via some of our medical student acquaintances, but the Saint Sinners, or Saint Barts, we would never take anything of value from the graves. This was all for the furtherance of science, you see. That's what we all told ourselves every time we stole into the graveyard at night, spade in hand. You realize body snatching is a serious crime. If you were caught, you could expect the gravest of consequences, no pun intended. We students were caught between the hammer and the anvil. We needed funds for research. Professor Harebrain said exactly the same.
I'm quite speechless at the apparent levity with which you reveal this abhorrent behavior.
Well, if you wanted to know why I was there at Lowgate Cemetery, that's the reason, but I never expected it to end the way it did. That I regret to this day.
Hold it!
Strange happening at the Lowgate Cemetery, which you now deny. Not entirely. I ran to fetch the police at the time, you know. I was shaking like a leaf. But they didn't believe a word of it. In fact, I was very nearly arrested myself. So you went to the papers instead. I started big with London News, but unsurprisingly, they didn't want to know either. In the end, though, it was reporters from the gossip rags, the gutter press, that came to get my story, and it spread like the plague through the capital. The gossip-hungry Londoners lapped up the tale.
The story was in every single paper at the time, with the exception of some broadsheets.
And yet only 2 or 3 of them actually interviewed me personally. Most of the accounts turned out to be very interpretive ghost stories.
What about the article in the Daily Circus?
That particular journalist found me at my dormitory. I don't know how, but he'd discovered my name, so I recounted to him exactly what had happened that night. The journalist was Odie Asman. What? And from your description, he drew this over. That's why he wanted. That's the motive. It's right there. Odie Asman ruined his life, and so he got revenge by killing the man who sent him out of, caused him to have to withdraw from university by becoming a social outcast. Precisely. That's how I learned the condemned man was the infamous Professor. Because the reporter told me so, I had no idea myself, you see.
Newspaper reporters are wont to snoop around in matters that don't concern them.
So the scene portrayed in the illustration is accurate then? Well... Thinking back now, I realize that...
Hold it!
What are you talking about? I think I explained already, didn't I? Lowgate Cemetery is at the rear of Barkay Prison, so it was renowned among us students at the university for being haunted by the ghosts of condemned convicts. For some absurd reason, I was scared of the graveyard at night, and as a result, only too willing to believe that nonsense about the dead coming back to life.
But you said you actually saw it.
I said what I'd seen in my mind's eye. After all, resurrection is impossible, isn't it? You'd have to be unhinged to think otherwise. Unless, of course, you have some evidence that proves I encountered the professor that night. I don't know. The point is, that night was a pivotal moment in my life.
This song is fantastic. I can't stop.
That young woman being Madame Tuspels, of course. Precisely. I must say, I didn't expect to run into her again like this 10 years later. As I have explained, I went by the name published in the article, and, comme ça, I found the man.
Yes, the article in the Daily Circus, I think you said.
I was a poor student with barely a penny to my name at the time. And the young lady put £5 in front of me.
So you readily consented to having a waxwork of yourself made and give permission for it to be put on display.
I did. I should sell what little I had to sell, I concluded. Ah oui, I remember now. I purchased something else from you that day, n'est-ce pas? Did you? I can't say I remember. What was it, madame? His camera. Ah. Oh yes, I made a point of taking it with me whenever I made an excursion into the cemetery.
Took a camera with you, sir. To what end?
To record the details of the bodies I disinterred. But I had no intention of ever visiting a graveyard again after that night, so I sold it.
I see.
But I still have it, monsieur. It is part of the special exhibit in my House of Elves. I'm very meticulous about such details. It is the two spells way.
You have a lot of ways.
It would seem then that this is the very same camera Mr. Trevor took to him with him to Logate Cemetery on the night in question. Yes, interesting. I wonder if it's this, the camera, but I should probably press the last statement just in case. This is the motive statement right here. This article, you mean published in the Daily Circus? Yes, somebody informed the dean that it was my name that appeared in the article, and carelessly let slip that night after night I was digging up graves. Hardly a model student, you might say. The university's reputation was execrably defiled, and I was expelled as a result. Mon Dieu, I had no idea. And having been run out of university, you found employment in some specialist trade. You combined your knowledge of science with the knowledge of stage magic. You created various experimental machines intended to demonstrate never-before-seen technology. And you used those deceptive machines to trick the government and private investors into giving you money. Professor Albert Harebrain was just your latest victim, wasn't he? Whatever are you talking about? I have no recollection of doing anything of the sort. What's Trevor up to? Maybe I missed. Trevor would have been. He must have taken a picture. Because the camera was used.
Objection!
Oh, it's not this? What the fuck? Okay, I guess the blood comes in later. Yeah, so like what happened? Probably that he hit man with his camera. Hey, Charles Darwin to receive Copley Medal. And Mad Sheep Rampage, and the Great Stink. Holy shit, there must be something I'm not thinking of. Oh, oh shit. What if it's one of those... It's one of these where I have to question it again, don't I? Now that I have new information. Oh, unless it's fucking... Wait a minute. Let me look at the 10-year-old article again.
Objection!
Oh, it's not this. Okay. I'm not sure. I feel like this is the problem statement. But, like, I'm not totally sure. I'll take the risk on this one, because I have a feeling it's the... But I did this already, and I'm not sure what the... Dance for me. Bro, did I not present the 10-year-old article to this statement? I feel like that is something that's important here. This is the problem statement. I know it is, but... Oh, I hit the wrong statement, didn't I? Fuck me, dude.
Objection!
I'm dumb. Alright, Mr. Drebber, but I don't believe that. Don't believe what? Your latest claim. You did see the professor on the night 10 years ago. Oh dear, we seem to be at odds, but I was there and you were not. I know what I didn't see. The illustration of this article was drawn based upon what you told the journalist that you witnessed. A figure emerging from a tomb wearing an iron mask. Yes, when the killer was tried 10 years ago, it was decided in the closed court's ruling that the man would wear the mask to hide his identity. It wasn't to be removed even during execution and subsequent burial. Not even the prison wardens were to see the man's face, but obviously the provision of this mask was not public knowledge. So, Mr. Drebber, as you've just heard, a lowly student at the University of London certainly wouldn't, well, I don't know what the hell I was, my gut was telling me that was the answer, but I didn't realize it was because of the mask. So unless you'd actually seen the professor that night, it's inconceivable that the artist would have included the mask in that illustration. Like windows, you know. Boom.
Order, order. Well, Mr. Drebber.
It's a vile scene, isn't it, if you look closely? And as I've already been at pains to point out, I was utterly petrified. Which is why I had it in my head that I'd seen such a blood-curdling sight. But afterwards, I came to my senses, and I realized that I'd been mistaken.
You're still saying you didn't see it? If you're stubbornly sticking to that story, witness, then amend your testimony to explain exactly how you think your eyes deceived you.
Of course, I'd only too happy to oblige. I can't believe he's still not going to concede the point. This game has a lot of present and then go back to the same testimony, and it's kind of cool. Fellow grave robber, what are you talking about? Well, I wasn't the only— oh, I didn't even look at what the new statement is. I just pressed it out. Fellow grave robber word. Busy in the cemetery at night, you know. Other body snatchers were at work. Of course, when I saw one emerging from the hole he'd dug, my heart very nearly stopped. So that's the terrifying sight I actually saw. You see, you're claiming it was just another student that was on equally insalubrious business as yourself. Many of the medical students will wear metal masks to protect them from bacteria during dissections. You see that? The masks work. Clearly, the fellow was using such a mask to protect his anonymity, wouldn't you say?
Protection.
But there's more to the story, isn't there? The article goes on to say. In the next second, a gunshot rang out suddenly from behind. The bullet pierced the resurrected man's chest, whose breath then stilled once more.
We might assume that the sexton discovered the miscreants at work, perhaps, and fired upon one of them.
If a gravedigger had shot someone in a cemetery, I think it might have been rather big news, my lord.
Yes, well,
Strange.
I can only assume it was an embellishment built on later.
By the report, that is not the voice I would have given.
Strange.
I gave her more of a dainty voice.
Excuse me.
Madame Two Spells. Don't take it out, Mr. Chomps. Oh la la, pardon. I was lost in my thoughts. Would it be fair to say that Mr. Drebber's last remark was significant to you in some way? I thought it was a little strange, that is all. How Monsieur Drebber could claim this now. If you don't mind me saying, Madame, what are you talking about? Well, when I met you 10 years ago at your university dormitory, you recounted to me about your adventures in cemetery, no? Including the gunshot. Stop. You might want to watch your tongue, you know.
Objection.
The one who needs to watch his tongue is you, Drebber. Have a care, Drebber. That's no way to speak to a lady.
Please, Madame Two Spell. Carry on. Of course. According to what Monsieur Drebber told me at the time, he did hear a gunshot from behind him, and the bullet hit the contained man. I said nothing of the sort. No, you were very explicit about the details. About the masks that the figure was wearing. And the blood that spattered over you when he was shot. Enough. Shut up, woman. You're making this all up.
That will do. Mr. Drebber? Mr. Drebber?
Yes?
You refute the account just given by Madame Two Spells?
I have no recollection of ever saying those things. Come on, do you really expect us to believe?
Control yourself, counsel. I will not permit baseless excuses in my courtroom.
You permit them all the time, when it's the prosecution.
The instant kinesis machine worked. Give me a break. Under the circumstances, I think it best that you supplement your testimony with a statement to clarify your position on this witness.
But very, very well. I disagree. The camera says differently.
Objection.
Mr. Drebber, do you remember this camera? What? That is the camera from that fateful night?
Yes, we borrowed it from the house for us.
It's the camera you took with you to the cemetery that night, Mr. Drebber. And what is that supposed to be significant? This kind of camera is rarely seen in our homeland, so my colleague and I were keen to examine it closely. We notice that the lens extends forward on the end of some bellows. Like this.
Hold it!
You can hold it? What's that? What's that? There. Just on the bellows. It looks like a dark red stain. Ah. That's right. It's a rather conspicuous mark here on the bellows.
Good lord, are you suggesting?
Yes, my lord. It would appear to be a spatter of blood. Something rather that can be confirmed with a simple chemical test. Isn't that right, Dr. Say? It would be difficult to determine if it was human blood and not the blood of some animal. But yes, to test whether or not it's blood at all is simple enough. I propose that Madame Tispel's testimony was correct. And that on the night in question 10 years ago, you were spattered with blood from the gunshot wound. Well, and that furthermore, you really did witness the condemned professor emerging from his tomb. There's simply no way you could have forgotten such a traumatic experience. In other words, the only explanation is that you're trying to hide the fact that you saw the professor that night. But why? Why would he want to do that? Well, not for his own gain, it would seem. Well, whose then? Who could benefit? Mr. Trevor's obviously lying in order to protect somebody.
Goodness, he's shielding someone?
That's the most emotion I've seen off of Trevor all day. Yes, my lord, and clearly, someone who doesn't want the truth about the professor coming back to life to be exposed.
Well, counsel, who is it then? Who's this witness trying to...
It's Dr. Scythe, obviously.
Take that!
The obvious answer is Dr. Scythe.
Scythe? Whatever do you mean?
Imagine the convict who'd been sentenced to death was not in fact killed. Imagine that if that was to come to light. What are you insinuating? And imagine if the convict in question was the country's most hated mass murderer, and it was the professor.
That would be an unprecedented scandal.
Dispels is, I want to say, I'll check, 1 second. How do I, is it? ...26. Which means, holy shit, she was 16 years old when she snuck into that grave site and sculpted from a dead body by bribing the grave digger. 16 years old she was when she did that. Yeah, she must have been that kind of teenager. I tell you, damn, these goth girls, though. Oof.
That would be an unprecedented scandal.
Objection!
This is beyond a joke. Need I point out that the dead cannot come back to life? What you're suggesting would mean the execution never actually happened. Yes, that's exactly what it means.
Objection!
Once a man is sent to the gallows, he hangs. None could escape. Not in Great Britain.
Objection!
But the fact is, there was a witness to the fact that the man did escape his hanging.
If that were really true, counsel, the implications of misconduct would not stop at a supervising coroner. It would taint the honor of the entire judiciary from the ground up.
And it's exactly because of those monumental repercussions that Dr. Scythe would consent to any demand made of her by someone who threatened to expose the secret. She is Wilden, even if that meant being complicit in a crime.
You mean...
I mean that Dr. Scythe wasn't collaborating in Mr. Drebber's wicked scheme. She was coerced into collaborating in order to protect her decade-old secret. She switched the dead body of Mr. Asman with the waxwork model and fabricated the autopsy report. Oof, that's the most emotion I've seen out of her all day. Yeah, show me your leg, boy. Leg? Pray forgive my freshly filled hallowed chalice, and a whole raft of other discourtesies now.
Goodness me.
It's just the sort of tall tale Londoners would enjoy, I grant you. An executed killer rising from the dead, a Scotland Yard cover-up, conspiracy at the highest levels. JFK Jr. will appear in Dallas today. Well, so let me ask you one thing. What's that?
If the condemned man really did emerge from his tomb that night only to be shot in the chest, who pulled the trigger and disposed of him forever?
Well, I have no idea. We have too little information to work that out at present, I think. I couldn't agree more.
The Old Bailey is no place for wild fantasies.
Ugh.
And have you considered this, my learned Nipponese friend?
Considered what? Do you realize what a dangerous endeavor it would be to coerce...
Do you realize just what a dangerous endeavor it would be to coerce this woman into such criminal activity? It's tantamount to declaring war on the entire British police force and judiciary. Quite. Hard to imagine any sum of money being offered for research can warrant it. Rely on some sage deception when so much is at stake would be madness.
Well, I suppose. And this was no petty crime either. The victim was murdered. A man who'd already invested money in this venture and would be instrumental in future profits too. No, you did. You had no reason to kill Mr. Asman. I had no reason to kill Mr. Asman at all. Are you forgetting that his death results in me receiving not a single penny? The court is already aware of the contract between myself and the victim. No.
There's the contract, that's very true.
Using threats to force the head of the forensic investigation team to cooperate is extreme, especially for a government grant he had no guarantee of receiving in the first place. If the research grant was the aim, taking Mr. Asman's life would have made no sense anyway, which means Mr. Drebber's motive wasn't money at all. He was just trying to kill Mr. Asman. I know his motive. Your time is up, my learned friend. I'd say you have one last chance before the jury lose their patience for this charade. Let's see. Yeah. How do you explain why this... I like how he just dodged out of the way he's funny. How do you explain why this engineer would throw all caution to the wind and threaten his own country?
At this point, I'm not prepared to listen to more of this outlandish conjecture without proof. So, counsel, present your evidence.
Alright. Who exactly was Mr. Asman to Drebber? There's a connection there that no one's seen. I've seen it. 2 pieces of evidence. Let me do it. Yes, my lord. It's a 10-year-old article, right? Yeah. Oh, Asman. It's not that hard.
Take that!
It's this newspaper article, my lord. That was written 10 years ago, and every detail has been examined already. What can it possibly tell us? That dribble should never have been written. It's typical gutter press nonsense that means nothing. Yes, on its own, it isn't particularly significant. However, when considered alongside another piece of evidence, it will completely explain your motive for wanting Mr. Asman dead. What other evidence?
Counsel? Yes, let me do it.
Oh, they're right next to each other, too. Let me just make sure. Same signature and everything. It's this contract, my lord. Mr. Drebber, this is the contract you signed with Mr. Asman. Yes, that's right, the very document, in fact. That proves I had no reason to kill the man. No, I'm afraid not. What? There's something very significant that this newspaper article and the contract have in common.
Really?
And it's that common link that shows very clearly why you were determined to kill Mr. Odie Asman. It seems the defense has uncovered something the rest of us have missed. So, my learned friend, point out what these 2 pieces of evidence have in common.
Take that!
What these 2 pieces of evidence have in common is a signature.
A signature?
The signature on the illustration that accompanies this 10-year-old article and the signature on the contract belong to the same person.
What?
As the court has heard, this illustration was drawn 10 years ago by the newspaper reporter who found Mr. Drebber and interviewed him about his ordeal. If you look closely, the reporter's signature can be seen on the bottom right corner of the drawing. And if you look at the contract here, which was signed between the witness and the victim last year, you can clearly see Mr. Asman's signature at the bottom.
Let me see now. Good lord, yes, they're identical.
In short, the journalist who drew the illustration and wrote the article published about Mr. Drebber 10 years ago was the victim of this case, Mr. Odie Asman.
Objection!
But explain to the court why. Why would this constitute a motive for the witness to murder Asmund? Well, if you think back, you'll remember that Mr. Drebber talked about that article in his testimony.
Grave robbing, you say?
Yes, exhuming. Yeah. I think I suffered retribution enough. The Daily Circus eventually unearthed my name and put it in print. It caused me a great many headaches. In the end, I had to leave the university. That was the only paper with the bad grace to identify me unambiguously, I might add. Then I gave up on my dream of becoming a scientist, and it was all because of that newspaper article. At the time, you were a student of the University of London who dreamt of becoming a scientist. However, this single newspaper article changed your entire life.
So Mr. Asmund used to be a newspaper journalist, did he?
He did, my lord. In fact, it's a widely held belief that Asmund managed to position himself at the heart of his criminal network, thanks to the many dubious connections he made during his time as a reporter. So you had given up on your dream and... So you had to give up on your dream and leave university. You lost everything. Eventually you found yourself working in the field of science, but only in the shadows. And all because of that article, written by Mr. Asmund. Enough. Stop this endless drivel about my life. What?
Explain yourself, Mr. Drebber.
Yes, it's true. I had to leave the university as a result of that article. But it was just the straw that broke the camel's back. What do you mean? Almost every student of science in the faculty was too poor to actually conduct any research, but they struggled on with their hypotheses anyway. We all did, only to have them taken by vultures. Sooner or later, you knew your ideas would be stolen and patented by some wretch or other. That's after all.
Gracious.
Making a name for yourself as a scientist in a climate like that was a miracle only a select few geniuses could ever hope to achieve. Personally, I wasn't one of those geniuses who... Nope, that's not true. Being forced out of the university because of Lowgate was the best thing that could have happened to me.
Objection!
Mr. Drebber.
Do you genuinely believe that? Of course I do. Who's better placed to know whether or not I possess a talent for science than me? I'm sorry to say that your words don't ring true at all. How dare you? And I have evidence to prove it. How are you in a position to say anything about me? I don't know you from Adam. Fine, if you think you have evidence, go ahead, show it. What could you possibly have to disprove the idea that I was happy to leave university because I lacked talent? This.
Take that!
Do you remember this, Mr. Drebber? We found it at your workshop.
Is that a Royal Society trophy for excellence in science? What exactly is this trophy, Council?
It's the greatest honor that can be bestowed on a young scientist, my lord. There is no higher accolade. It recognizes emerging talent and promises a bright future.
Good gracious.
Your prospects for the future were excellent, weren't they, Mr. Drebber? Because even then, you were a genius in your field. But you lost everything. You had no more future, and your talents would go to waste. All as a result of this one newspaper article. I don't know when you realized who Mr. Asmund was, but when it dawned on you that he was the same journalist who 10 years ago ruined your life. It's abundantly clear that you had no intention of forgiving the man. The truth is... I think he's going to fold. No, he's not. Maybe. Fine. Clearly this has run its course now. What? What? I admit it. All of it. What? What are you doing? It's exactly as the Japanese man said. I was coerced into going along with this man's plot to murder the victim, on the condition that he kept my dirty secret from 10 years ago.
No. Lord!
Dr. Scythe, do you realize what you're saying, woman? It's all true. That day, When I arrived at the Crystal Tower and saw the bird cage, my heart nearly stopped beating. That memory from a decade ago that I'd done best to bury deep inside myself. It was the professor again, staring me in the face. And then, before I had a chance to react, I noticed something else. There was a note tucked inside the model's jacket. Dr. Sly. Dr. Slythe, you will go along with my plan, from someone who knows the truth about what really happened that night 10 years ago. All the instructions were there in the note. Every detail was meticulously written out. I had no choice but to do what it said. I made the necessary alterations to the scene and fabricated the autopsy report as instructed. There was really no other choice. It had to be done to protect the judiciary. I can only apologize now. Breakdown? They're all gonna get in trouble. Every single person on this witness stand did something real shitty. Why on earth would you buckle now? Well, there's no point in trying to hide it anymore, is there? I would have done anything to stop it coming out, even collaborated in a murder. But the great lie about that execution 10 years ago has been exposed. Whatever happens, I'm finished. So then, Mr. Drebber, what do you say to that? Your accomplice has admitted everything. Surely, it goes without saying. You admit your part in too, then. I admit nothing at all. What? Have you forgotten that kinesis machine was ripped to shreds by an explosion? Short of me admitting to a crime, there's really no possible way for you to prove I did anything wrong. No!
Order.
Whatever this man says, I admit everything. He threatened to expose my secret, so I went along with his plan. And Lord Van Zieks. Lord Van Zieks? Yes? Hope you'll accept my apologies. What happens next is in your hands, of course.
I've heard more than enough now. I hereby present the final findings of this court. This trial is not the proper forum to pursue the long alleged wrongdoings of Mr. Drebber. The defendant is Professor Albert Harebrain.
Very true. It had slipped my mind. Isn't he one of your closest friends?
As the court has heard, Dr. Scythe has admitted to the allegations brought by the defense, thereby absolving the defendant of any possible guilt.
You mean...
At the present time, it is the conclusion of the court that the defendant was not involved in any wrongdoing. Does the prosecution have any objection?
None, my lord. Oh, congratulations, Mr. Naruhodo. You've proven Professor Harebrain's innocence.
Without further ado, then, the adjudication. Unless the prosecution and defense have any other matters to discuss.
I don't know. This doesn't feel quite right. Why did Dr. Scythe suddenly admit to it like that? Is everything alright, Mr. Naruhodo? Like you said before, the way the trial is set to end now, the judge will certainly deliver a verdict of not guilty. But is that really what we want? What the defense should be pursuing now? Reading for now.
Objection!
The defense objects to the trial ending at this time, my lord.
I beg your pardon?
We demand one final testimony.
What?
Man, this is like the first time in any Ace Attorney game the judge was willing to pronounce not guilty without having a real killer identified.
You do realize I'm about to adjudicate in favor of your client, I presume.
What are you playing at now, my Nipponiese friend? Why would you want to obstruct the conclusion of the trial at this point? No defense lawyer in his right mind would do that. Mr. Naruhodo, what exactly are you thinking? The truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, and a way to bring it all out into the open. Right. Yes, in hindsight. Ah yes, one word of warning before I go. If, in the course of this trial this afternoon, you perceive even a shadow of doubt about the truth, don't let it out of your sight. Pursue it like a dog with a bone. If the bitter end, you understand. Do not falter, whatever may come to pass. I'm sure Mr. Sholmes knew. He must have deduced that this would happen. Yes, I'm here in court to advocate for my client, and to secure an acquittal. Obviously. But that's not all. I believe that I have a duty to the court to pursue the whole truth of the case, until every last detail is laid bare. And that is why the defense calls for further testimony from Dr. Scythe. Testimony from me? About what? About the nature of your collaboration with Mr. Enoch Drebber. Ah, and in case it's escaped your attention, I've already admitted to everything I did. The whole truth has already been revealed. So stop wasting everyone's time. As his lordship made very plain, your client will get the acquittal you wanted for him. There's simply no point protracting this business further with another tedious cross-examination.
Objection!
Pray forgive my careless handling of that hallowed bottle. Slipped. Oops. Another thing I love about Lord Van Zieks, he just does all this incredibly ridiculous shit. Pouring and drinking wine in the middle of court, throwing his leg up on a table, proposing a toast, throwing the bottle into the gallery, and all he's just like, oops. That's what you call it?
What is your objection, Lord Van Zieks?
The prosecution also calls for supplementary testimony from the witness. Don't be stupid. If there's more to this case than has yet come to light, then I will join my learned friend in pursuing the facts until the bitter end. What? Lord Van Zieks.
This is most irregular, to say the least. However, as the prosecution also calls for it, I will uphold the request. Dr. Slythe, you will testify for the court, explaining the full extent of your involvement in the murder apparently committed by Mr. Drebber.
Very well. Oh, they just got rid of Madame Dispel. She's gone. It all began at the scene when I saw the waxwork and the note tucked inside its jacket. The actual body of the victim, as indicated in the note's instructions, was beneath the experimentation stage. The body had to be arranged in certain ways to implicate the defendant, which was my job. I enlisted the help of the entire forensic investigation team to dress the scene appropriately. The truth about the execution 10 years ago is a state secret of the highest level. I had to protect it. So I was right, the stage and the machine were all specifically designed for the deception. So it seems, and all meticulously prepared. You did well to see through it. You're a very shrewd boy. So kind of you to say. And what about this autopsy report then? All I did was record the location of the body as being in the Crystal Tower instead of under the stage. That's all? That's a terrible corruption. Only my team were aware of that seed, and then only under my explicit instructions. Nobody else at Scotland Yard knew anything about it, I assure you.
You must be thankful for small mercies, I suppose. Well, I believe that testimony has clarified everything. There's no particular need for object.
No, I disagree. I can't shake the feeling something's wrong. Just look at the expression on Dr. Scythe's face. It's the defense's right to cross-examine any witness following testimony. What is it about you Japanese that makes you all so doggedly persistent?
Very well, if you so desire, Counsel, proceed with the cross-examination.
Yes, my lord.
Hold it!
From what you described before, it sounds like the note was anonymous. Did you have any idea of who was behind it? There are very few people in the know about what really happened 10 years ago to start with. But anyway, I'd never heard of this engineer, so no, I had no idea. Yet despite not knowing who was behind the plan, you went along with it? I had no choice. Protecting the professor's secret is my only concern. But the horse is bolted now, and the stable door will never shut again. Scotland Yard's reputation will be immeasurably damaged as a result of this. Yes, thank you, Lord Van Zieks. I'm well aware of that.
So, as I understand it, what you found in the birdcage was the waxwork model. Where, then, was the victim's body?
So you know about the special construction of the stage used to carry out the trick then? It was quite obvious what had happened with the victim in the waxwork. And you switched the two over, didn't you? In other words, you recorded the victim's body as having been discovered in the Crystal Tower, and the waxwork? I wrapped it and sent it by couch to the specified address at the specified time. And why were you given such directions? Presumably so it could be recovered by Drebber and returned to Madame Dispels. I see. And then you put the birdcage back on the experimentation stage? Yes, although someone obviously made a mistake about which cage should go where. I thought I'd made it perfectly clear to the team, but still. I suppose you were focused on the victim's body, that being a more important detail.
Hold it!
When you say arranged, I presume you mean with this? Yes, the instructions in the engineer's note said something along the lines of fabricate some evidence to make it clear that harebrained alone could have killed Asmund. So you mean that was your doing? I patched Harebrain's ridiculous screwdriver from the stage and took it with me alone to the abyss under the stage where the birdcage has fallen. Doctor? I didn't feel it would be appropriate to involve anybody else in that particular part of the deception. There was a void under the stage where I had found the birdcage lying in the dirt. I approached it, leaned down, and slowly opened it up. Then I took the screwdriver in both hands and plunged it into the man's chest. What if he was alive? And then you noted that in your fake autopsy report, it was a fictitious cause of death. Exactly. So, the actual cause of death was the trauma resulting from a 30-foot drop.
What?
What is it, Mr. Zato? Something about Dr. Scythe's last statement. Something on my mind, that's all. Yes, mine too. Dr. Scythe. There's really no need to shout. I can hear you perfectly well. The defense calls for you to add what you just said to your formal testimony. Oh? Which part? I guess the real cause of death sounds right? Maybe... No, I'd rather hear about... We know that, so, like, maybe what you did. What you did. How you stabbed Mr. Asmund in the chest. That part. Fine, if that's what you want, but there's really no need to point. The prosecution concurs.
Very well. We will supplement your testimony now, witness.
If you wish, my lord. I stood over the victim's corpse, where it lay in the toppled cage, and plunged a screwdriver into the chest. There has to be something I can present. Is the... Is there something here that I'm not thinking about? There's something weird about this blood stain. I'm gonna try it. I think this is the only statement where it makes sense to even say something like this.
Objection!
I can't put my finger on what's wrong with it, but I think something's weird about the bloodstain. I've got a nasty feeling that this inconsistency points to an extremely uncomfortable truth. What on earth is the matter, Counsel? Have you lost your tongue? Oh my god, listen to this muted-ass pursuit theme. This is great. That's my jam right there. I apologize, my lord. Dr. Scythe, in that last statement of yours, there's just one point that seems to defy explanation. I'm just gonna keep listening to it for a minute. Incredible. Seems to defy explanation.
Out with it, my learned friend.
There's an obvious inconsistency between your description and this photograph, which shows the victim in the birdcage following the events that led to his death.
Objection!
The court has already examined that photograph in depth. There's nothing new we can learn from
Objection!
it. Yes, we have already considered it. That's true. We now know the facts to be different. What do you mean?
I believe we should let the defense explain.
What's wrong with it? Why do I think this? Look closely at the bloodstain on the victim's chest. See, I'm right, but I don't... Oh. Oh. Yeah, duh. It would... That means it's seeped downwards. Towards the man's feet.
Why is that significant, Counsel?
It means he would have been stabbed upright. If the victim was stabbed moments before the kinesis machine was set in motion, that's entirely expected.
Ah! Of course, no, that's not what happened.
Exactly. Dr. Scythe made it very clear in her testimony just now, at the point in which she stole Professor Harebrain's screwdriver and stabbed the victim was after the grand deception was set in motion, when the birdcage had fallen below the stage out of sight. From the shape of it, it's clear that the birdcage would have fallen at its side after the 30-foot drop, and the victim had really been stabbed once inside the birdcage in that position. The blood from the wound would have spread out equally in all directions. For it to form the longitudinal appearance we see in the picture is inconceivable. Given that the victim's blood seeped vertically downwards from the wound, it must be the case that when you stabbed Mr. Asman, he was standing up. In short, Dr. Scythe, your latest testimony was a total fabrication. Oh, and here comes the real one. She killed him. The trauma didn't do it. It was the stab wound. Now I've identified the contradiction. There's only one way to explain the facts. We've all been under a great misapprehension here.
What? What sort of misapprehension?
Dr. Scythe, you claim you were coerced into helping Mr. Drebber as a result of the note he left in the waxwork. You claim that you made changes to the scene of the crime to implicate the defendant. And you claim that you authored a fake autopsy report to cover your tracks. But one of those claims is an out-and-out lie, because the question of what the bloodstain really tells us has only one possible answer. If that is the case,
What is it, man? Counsel, you've clearly struck upon a revelation. Now tell the court what it is. Which part of Dr. Scythe's story is shown to be a lie by the contradiction in her testimony?
it has to be the autopsy report. You say you examined the body and it wrote this report based on your findings. But that's a blatant lie, isn't it? I'm sorry, but I simply can't fathom what... Did I get it wrong? Truth is, you had your subordinates do the work. Oh, shit. Come on, we just...
Guilty.
How?
Guilty.
How?
Guilty.
How?
Guilty.
How?
Guilty!
How?
Kill me.
Yeah, well, that kills the momentum, don't it? That's alright. Is that my first death? No, it's definitely not. Didn't happen. Oh, duh. Fuck. I didn't even read the other options. I saw the autopsy report and I thought she meant the cause of death or something. The answer is very simple if you consider the sequence of events. That was stupid on my part. I'm sorry, guys. If, when the victim was stabbed, the blood from the wound seeped downwards, as it did, we can be sure that the victim must have either been sitting or standing upright at the time. But as you rightly pointed out, the birdcage would have fallen aside when it fell beneath the stage. Yes, it would, which tells us that the victim must have been in that position of his own accord.
Objection!
That's impossible. The man was dead, remember?
No, that is the misapprehension. When the birdcage fell from the stage into the void below, it must have hit the ground with considerable force. But Mr. Asmund didn't die in the fall. His neck wouldn't be moving like that, though. He probably lost consciousness for a while, but when he came round, he got to his feet to climb out of the cage. Just as Dr. Scythe appeared. If the victim was in fact alive at this point in time, it changes everything. Mr. Odie Asmund's killer wasn't the defendant, Professor Albert Harebrain, nor was it the mastermind behind the stage trickery, Mr. Enoch Drebber. It was you, Dr. Courtney Scythe.
Order! Can this possibly be true? Have you been taking me
For a fool. It was you, was it? You killed him? You hoped by admitting to be an accomplice in Mr. Drebber's scheme the trial would end, before you were accused of a far worse crime. Cold-blooded murder. Oh, do shut up. You're so desperate now you're making all this up, as if I would do something like that. I assure you, the defense is not desperate, Doctor. Mr. Naruhodo has established the fact using evidence and logic alone. Ah, logic? Don't make me laugh. Your logic is a gaping hole. What? What do you mean? I thought it was obvious. A motive, boy. You're lacking a motive. That's the reason why I have to kill Mr. Asmund.
Asmund was involved in any number of criminal activities from coercion to theft and murder, but there's no known connection to Dr. Slythe there. I'm rather relieved to say it does seem somewhat far-fetched.
True, there's no obvious motive, but there's still something in the back of my mind.
Well, you better tell me what it is, Ryu.
I feel sure I've seen something somewhere that hints at why the coroner might have done this. Yes, I might have tampered with the crime scene and concocted a fake report, but murdering someone for no reason is a very different story. No, when you question what possible reason you could have for wanting to kill Mr. Ed, let me look at the evidence right now before I accidentally present something. I know, right? What was Harebrain's motive for this shit? I guess it was a stat. I don't know what the hell was going on with Van Zeeks' argument, honestly, in this entire trial. No, when you question what possible reason you could have for wanting to kill Mr. Asmund, something did come to mind. What? What? What?
What was it, Counsel? Enlighten the court at once.
Yes, we saw it yesterday, didn't we? 500 scalpels? Is that what it was? That's the only thing I can think of. I don't know where this comes in, but was she providing the scalpels for the murders? The scalpel, or rather, scalpels.
You say scalpels?
Huh? It would appear that word has struck a chord, Doctor. You, come on, out with it. It was yesterday when we visited your laboratory. Look at this big, thick book here. That appears to be an accounting ledger. It's a record of the forensic investigation team's spending, I think. Oh? What is it? It's clear that the team purchases various equipment and supplies on a monthly basis, but... well, one entry seems rather strange. Really? In what way? They're buying 500 scalpels every month! Wait, Paper Star, you're completely correct.
500 scalpels a month?
First, I wondered what on earth you could be using that many scalpels for. But actually, I realize it's not the scalpels themselves that are significant. It's the money for them, disappearing every month from the department's accounts. Asmund's criminal organization had relied heavily on extortion for its funding. Tracing the money from the forensic investigation team's account to find out where it was going would be extremely straightforward. 10 years ago, when Mr. Asmund was still a journalist and wrote this article about Mr. Drever, he may well have stumbled upon information as he was researching the story. Information relating to Dr. Scythe's darkest secret that he would use to rack money from her for the next decade.
The darkest secret? Good lord, you mean?
I don't know what happened on the night of that execution 10 years ago. Clearly, the opportunity to rid yourself of that menace was too tempting to pass up. So in the end, you weren't coerced at all, were you? You did it entirely of your own free will. You stabbed Mr. Asmund in the heart with all your might, to silence the blackmailer who knew your dark secret forever. Breakdown? You'll never understand. None of you. What we've had to keep covered up all these long years. There's very little of the machine remains after it was ripped apart by the bomb. The truth of this case can never be properly established unless you speak out. And if you decide not to, it's very possible that Courtney Slice will escape punishment for her crimes. Please, sir, own up to what you've done and tell the court the truth about what happened. 10 years ago you told the truth, and you were robbed of a bright and successful future as a result. I can certainly understand your bitterness and your consternation now. However, this is surely the chance you've been waiting for, to sever the hold that fate's had over you all these years. Super, high voltage, instantaneous, kinesis, I mean really. It's the addle-brained mock scientists that are the worst, you know. You're so tired you had constipation. It did cross my mind. They don't recognize the fact that they don't have talent. They can't even get that right. And so they end up chasing impossible dreams, having unbridled faith in their abilities. They go on and on about their wonderful hypotheses, their stupid eyes shining like a little child's. They make me sick. I can't abide their foolishness.
Careful, Mr. Drever.
I was particularly pleased with the Kinesis machine. It made for quite a show, didn't it? So you admit it. You admit it was nothing more than a sham made for the purpose of killing the victim? Yes, I admit it. I did it all in the name of revenge. Revenge for the future that Mr. Asmund's article had deprived you of 10 years earlier. But the revenge you sought didn't stop at Asmund, did it? Which is where that very particular waxwork comes in. Yes, I see. The condemned convict that you saw rising from the grave in Lowgate Cemetery 10 years ago. If your account of those events was all true, then Scotland Yard couldn't afford to acknowledge. Then obviously Scotland Yard couldn't afford to acknowledge what had happened, even if it meant discrediting a bright young man and crushing any future career he might have. So your plan required that you would abduct that particular waxwork model in order to exact your revenge on Scotland Yard as well, or on Dr. Slythe to be precise. Or Scythe. Why do I keep saying Slythe? It was a year ago. By some extraordinary twist of fate, Asmund turned up at my workshop. He didn't remember who I was, of course. He just wanted to employ my services as an engineer. And he happened to have a paper with him. An article on the front page caught my eye about the coroner who'd handled that bogus autopsy being appointed head of a new forensic team. When I learned that news, my cognitive processes started to devise the plan. A horrid tale. He robbed me of my future, so I wanted to use the man's own wiles against him, for revenge, and have that rotten Scotland Yard eating out of my hand at the same time. I wanted them all to suffer the same humiliation I had to suffer. Your actions against those who's ruined your life were justified as revenge, at least to yourself. Certainly, no one has the right to destroy another's prospects, especially for purely selfish gain. And yet, in carrying out your plan, you did exactly that to someone else, didn't you? Did I? Did I? Professor Harebrain's only crime was his passion for his hypothesis, but you had no compunction about sacrificing his future to effect your revenge. You knew that he would be forever branded a failure and a fraud. Perhaps life treated you unfairly 10 years ago, and others' misconduct left your life in tatters. But remember this, you're just as bad as the people who you so hate. Your own actions, it resulted in exactly the same thing for another perfectly innocent young man.
Lord Van Zeeks, what of Dr. Scythe?
An immediate warrant for her arrest has been granted and she's been remanded in custody, my lord. I presume she will face trial in the coming days along with Mr. Drebber.
A most regrettable situation indeed. She's made great contributions to her profession over the years. It really is a hard truth to swallow.
However,
that is a topic for some future occasion. But now, Professor Harebrain.
Oh, heaven.
Oh, yes?
It seems there was a great deal more to your experiment than you realized. However, I think we can assume now that the sordid details have been brought to light. This has been a very long and profound trial, but I'm pleased to say you are absolved of all guilt.
This whole experience has taught me a very great but painful lesson. Me, this dedicated scientist, this devotee of natural philosophy. I've been selfish and self-centered, and above all, a fool.
Professor.
I've spent my entire life thinking of nothing but my research. Misguidedly believing that I could do whatever I set my mind to, despite my lack of talent. And the worst of it is, in the process, I've caused others pain and misery. Others who are far, far greater people than I.
No, Professor. That's not true.
What?
Don't tar yourself with the same brush as Drebber. What happened was his doing and his alone. This outcome is his fate, not yours. You're not to blame in any way. Lord Van Zeeks, in the derision with which he referred to you earlier, calling you a fool, talentless even, the man has no idea. To believe in yourself and work your fingers to the bone to realize your dreams, that's laudable, not laughable. No one has the right to deride another for such choices.
Oh. Thank you, Barack. I will tell Vanessa the same thing, and Charlene as well.
So, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, yes, my lord. It is this court's expectation that you will find the defendant not guilty of the charge which he stands accused. I presume there are no objections.
None from me, my lord. Certainly not. This trial has really made me think, but this is the right decision. It's all been proven methodically and rigorously. I have no misgivings whatsoever.
What's that? He's done, eh? Is he? It's all over.
I don't know, it's becoming the yard these days. I don't recognize the place. Very well. In that case, I hereby pronounce the defendant.
Wow, it's over, guys.
That was long. Court is adjourned.
I don't think this is the end of this case for a long shot. It's over. That was some trial.
What time is it?
Holy shit.
Professor, what a splendid outcome, isn't it? Oh, it is. Congratulations, Professor Harebrain. Mr. Naruhodo, Miss Susato, I am truly, Beside myself with gratitude. How can I ever thank you enough?
I'm just glad it's all been cleared up, that you realized that you were just caught up in a bad situation.
Ah, right now, you know, if I had that research grant money, I'd give the whole lot to you, every penny.
Well, that's very kind, but I'm just a student, so we don't need any financial reward. Your acquittal is more than enough. Shoals is gonna burst in like, yes, we need some financial reward.
Oh dear, what can I do? Aha! How about this, as a memento? This paper about my hypothesis is inside.
Well, this is a memento then.
Thank you.
I've been wondering, Professor, what are you going to do now?
Oh my, yes, what am I going to do? My hypothesis and great machine lie in ruins. Still, it's been too long since I was last in London, so perhaps I'll enjoy some sightseeing. I must explore the Great Exhibition while I'm here, too, and see if a new inspiration hits me.
Oh yes, that's a wonderful idea, Mr. I can't allow that. I can't allow that. Hello, Lord Van Zeeks. Lord Van Zeeks? What are you doing in here?
Barack!
I'm sorry you had to go through that, Albert.
Well, if I'm honest, it was terrifying. You were like a great demon behind your bench there, snarling down on your prey.
You're one of the few true friends I have. I couldn't leave it to anybody else to handle the prosecution. Or the defense. Sorry? Or the defense. Did I just hear that right?
I always knew that you had my best interests at heart. Don't worry. How about you show me around while I'm here in town? It's been a long time since we left university. We have a lot to catch up on.
Listen, Albert. In a few days, your acquittal will be made official. When that happens, you must head straight to Dover. I'll accompany you.
What? What?
From there, you'll cross the channel and make your way back to Germany. I've already purchased the tickets. He's worried about the Reaper's Curse.
But no, hold on a minute, Barack. What about the Great Exhibition? This is a chance of a lifetime for me to look around.
No sightseeing, Albert. Give up on the idea.
So sometimes it's hard to see any warmth in those eyes, Barack.
Lord Van Zeeks? What's all this about? Necessary precaution. Yes, I think I understand. You do? Well, Iris told me that when you met Lord Van Zeeks at his office some days ago, he asked how Mr. Natsume was doing. He looks like Clement from Gen 6, very much. That was my first thought when I saw him. Yes, that's right. I remember him being surprised at the time. And thinking it was nice of him to ask. The point is, Mr. Natsume is still alive and well, even though it's been more than 6 months now since he stood trial with the Reaper as the prosecutor. Ah, you mean the Reaper's influence doesn't stretch overseas? Those in the Reaper's sights meet their ends days or sometimes months after their acquittal. That's been the pattern up till now. Lord Strongheart is the Reaper, I'm telling you. But of course, we know that both Mr. Natsume and Gina were completely innocent. Wait, no, maybe it's not Lord Strongheart. I don't know. No, maybe it is. I think maybe Scotland Yard assigned Gregson and Gina to Paris for the same reason. True. And perhaps that governs the Reaper's actions. The truly innocent are spared. But I don't want to take any chances with a close personal friend.
Barack!
Like the mustache Nipponis, this man should leave the country without delay. That's why I'm packing him off to Germany at once. Right. Does your friend-shaped package get any sane? Goodness, was this your intention all along then, Lord Van Zeeks? In court, where people think of him as the Reaper, this man seems absolutely merciless, and yet, sometimes I feel as though I don't understand him at all. It's time to go, Albert. Back to the prison for the time being.
Yes, alright. Well then, Mr. Naruhodo. Thank you so much for everything.
Not at all, Professor. It was a pleasure getting to know you. Best wishes, Professor Harebrand.
Well, once the dust is settled, you must come and visit me in Germany. Anyway, goodbye for now.
Now, my Nipponi's friend. Oh, yes? I thought you'd gone too. We have matters to discuss. Can you spare me some time? You want to talk with me? I'll be waiting in the courtroom in 10 minutes. He has to pee and has to take all that stuff off to pee, I understand. Well, that was strange. For some reason, I didn't get that sense of impending doom as he walked away this time. The enigma, Barack Van Zeeks. What does he want to discuss, I wonder? The answer waits in the courtroom, I suppose. Here goes, then. I take it the professor was Japanese. That might be the problem. I think that's what's going on. The last time he talked with us alone in court, he talked about the betrayal at the hands of a Japanese person. So, are you satisfied? You saved a guileless scientist from a great injustice. Yes, I think so. I'm relieved, at least, that the man's innocence can be proven. Anyway, I imagine you've been wondering where my animosity towards you Nipponese comes from. Well, at first I thought you just didn't like me. I imagine you saw me as a pretentious child from an unimportant land who had no business being here. But now I think differently. You clearly know our ways. I would guess that some specific incident led to your thorough dislike of my race. Will you tell me what happened, please? The professor. I thought I'd never hear that name in this courtroom again, to be honest. He took your brother's life. Clint. My brother was Clint Van Zeeks. 16 years ago, when I was still just in my teens, he was already the director of prosecutions and a key member of the judiciary. I looked up to him. He was everything I aspired to be. He was involved in the establishment of justice systems in foreign countries as well. There were exchange programs between Britain and other nations then too, to share knowledge and ideas. As part of one of those programs, 3 judicial students came to Britain from your homeland, the Empire of Japan. Oh, if it was 16 years ago, then one of them could have been my father. Of course, I remember Dr. Mikotoba well. I had no idea. I was a minor at the time, training at the prosecutor's office. One day, Clint introduced me to 3 visiting Nipponese. So, you've actually met my father? He and his colleagues were polite and amicable. They were adept at their work and exacting in their standards. It was my first encounter with the Nipponese spirit, and it made a very great impression on me. But 6 years later, that's when it happened. The investigation was going nowhere. There were no suspects even, just an ever-growing list of victims, and in the end, my brother became one of them. The last, in fact, before the case was finally resolved. I'm so sorry, Lord Van Zeeks. Truly. Clint was always ready to put his life on the line for justice anyway, so he wouldn't have wanted it any other way. He lost his life to the killer, but it was his victory in the end. For me personally, though, it was a great loss. I found myself in a very dark place indeed. When I finally found out the killer's identity, the reason why no one had been able to catch the man sooner ceased to be such a mystery. He'd been hiding in plain sight all the time. In plain sight? Are you aware of political events 10 years ago? It was a period of extremely sensitive diplomacy between the British and Japanese empires. A new treaty was being forged, I think? Correct. The Anglo-Japanese Treaty of Friendship and Navigation was being concluded. The leaders of both countries were deep in extensive political discussions. Which is why this particular killer's appearance in court was conducted as a closed trial. If the British public had known the identity of the killer, not only would the treaty have been in jeopardy, but our 2 nations could have very well ended up at war. What? A war between Britain and Japan? But that would mean... Oh my! You mean to say the professor was...
When the trial reached its conclusion earlier, I thought to myself, yes, it's time.
Oh my god. So this is why we didn't have a breakdown at the end of the case. Because this is what they used it on.
Time for you to come face to face with this hideous monster. I borrowed the key for the mask from the proprietress of the Waxwork Museum. So see for yourselves now. Confirm it with your own eyes. The truth that's been hidden this past decade.
His voice is fucking hot as shit. Oh my God. I was wondering if we were gonna see this.
That's the professor?
Yes, that's him.
Until now, the thought never even crossed my mind. That the mass murderer, whose crimes shook Britain as never before, was Japanese.
Ow.
Wait a minute. That face. I feel as though I've seen it somewhere. It's strangely familiar.
Father.
This is a moment where I really wish I used webcam.
What? Father?
My jaw is on the floor.
Kazuma! My best friend, Kazuma Asogi. After a whole year, finally his memories returned.
Oh my God, the title makes so much sense now. I thought it was... Oh my God. It's really good.
As he stood there before me. Ryunosuke. Hello again. My friend.
Kazuma-sama!
They're all there, David. This is gonna make... This VOD will probably mark the 50th hour of this playthrough.
Judicial Assistant Mikotoba. It's been a very long road. Thank you. Thank you for guiding my friend here when I could not.
Oh my God.
It was an honor.
I knew you wouldn't die that easily. Kazuma. I owe you thanks, too, for taking good care of that in my absence. Oh. Karuma, the great blade of the Asogi clan, passed down through the generations. When we left Japan, this sword was at my friend's side. The Japanese man's katana is his soul, and he couldn't be parted from it.
I'm sorry, I'm in stunned silence.
But then, when the incident happened, it was Susato-san's wish that I inherit the sword.
Yeah, no, this is so good.
I've kept it with me ever since, along with my memories of the friendship we shared. With this by my side, I always felt that you were watching over me somehow.
I've made it. At last.
Father. Are you saying... Surely not. You mean, you knew all this time? I'm looking at it, but I still can't believe it. This mass murderer is Kazuma's father.
Is he gonna slice the head off of the waxwork? Madame is not gonna be happy about that.
Kazuma-sama.
Ryunosuke, we have much to talk about, but now is not the time. I'll be seeing you.
That's all Kazuma said. Before he turned and left us there, in the courtroom.
So he's the living afterimage of the man who took my brother's life, is he? Yes, Kazuma Asagi, my best friend. 3 months ago, when Lord Strongheart introduced us, I had an inkling there was something there. Some connection. But why did Lord Strongheart do that? Why did he make Cosmo Lord Van Zeke's apprentice? And when he was suffering amnesia, too. The man was apprehended, even executed, but his legacy just won't die. That's the sad truth. Anyway, all I had to say. I thank you for meeting with me as I asked. "10 years ago, my grandmother took me to the railway station. We were there to meet my father from the train. For me. It was the first time I'd ever seen him. Poor Susato-san. All this is tied up with painful memories for her too. She's never talked about this with me before. It took time to adjust to having father around, but just when I was starting to get used to it, he called me into his study one day. He told me that a great friend of his had passed away in London, and that the friend had left behind a son. A boy, 7 years my senior. Father told me the boy had made a promise to his late father, so he was studying to become a defense lawyer. I wanted to help, so I studied to become a qualified judicial assistant. As I'm sure you worked out, that young man's name was Kazuma Asagi. You see, that's how he and I met.
For a brief moment, my great friend had returned, only to disappear again all too soon. But in that fleeting encounter, something stirred. Something that had been dormant for a long time. As if great wheels had been set in motion. I could almost hear them creaking into life. In some ways, it was the end of a chapter. But in many, it was the start of a new one.
Oh my god. Oh my fucking god. Episode 4, Twisted Karma and his last bow. Well, what the fuck, you guys? This game is so fucking good. I don't know what to say. What the game can't do this to me. Unless cases 4 and 5 really, 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 really fuck up. This is on pace to be my favorite Ace Attorney game. I think. Based on what I have so far, it's on pace. Now, but in the meantime, I think it's time that we found somebody to raid. It's very good. Very, very, I already, I cannot recommend it enough, David. I'm sorry that you had to come in on what is essentially the 8th case of a 10-case series. And for the end, like, I feel kind of bad. But, you know, I couldn't have ever expected anything like this to happen, not in my wildest dreams. So, I guess we'll just find somebody to raid then. Sounds like a good plan. Let me look and see. Yeah. The pain that I endured waiting 6 years for this game was just, it was worth it. We're gonna raid Meds, because Meds is live. I know Meds is like our usual target, but that's okay. Let me wait till the ad runs out. Looks like he's doing some scare scraper. Maybe he's done, I don't know.
This isn't like a giant leap in video game technology.
I know it's not.
Well, even if he's done, I don't have anybody else to raid. Maybe he does, so we're gonna raid with... It's another long raid message. Have a good night, David. Thank you so much for stopping by. That's our raid message tonight. I guess real quick. Yeah, in case you're not following me on Twitter, you can do that, I guess. I post about random shit, stream updates and whatever, so that's probably the place where you're most likely to hear from me. I also have a Discord. I am still working on getting the community stuff going, but I would love to get more stuff going on between all of us. I will check Discord. I see your message, Rosie. Thank you. So you can join that if you'd like, if you're not already in there. And finally, if you are not following all of the streamers on the Twitch TV Smile Time Charity Twitch team, please do that. Oh, he's about to end. Oh, shit. Well, alright. That's no good. I was gonna... Commit? Alright, maybe we do it really fast. Well, I've said everything I want to say anyway, so we're gonna raid really fast. And again, our raid message is this. And you can also throw in, yeah, we know we're late. So let's... Alright, let's go. Bye, y'all. Have a good night. Love you. And thanks for coming out. Next stream is on Thursday, and it's gonna be more of this. So, see ya.